Namaste. Welcome to this panel discussion, episode 2. This is an eminent panel discussing the challenges, issues, and the solutions for encouraging advanced student projects in the world of leveraging our ancient Indic scientific and technological contributions. And what I would want to share is, while this is an interesting topic to a lot of people across entire country and perhaps the world, it's also important to know how to go about doing it, what kind of incentivization can be done. And specifically, we are talking to these professors who have been guiding students who have won the Vishwakarma Prize in IIT Madras. So that's the panel. So Rajivji, may I request you to share your thesis that you would like to present so we can have the eminent panel respond to your thesis, your provocative thesis.
So as a computer scientist, I spent most of my life studying algorithms. So I think the Indians discovered algorithm rather than model. And so what is the algorithm for building steel, or what is the algorithm for, improving your teeth or doing something? And this algorithm can be tested, and then a better algorithm can be developed without need necessarily for a model per se. Now, if you look at artificial intelligence today, it is being criticized because the AI-based algorithm that has been perfected, machine learning is constantly improving its algorithm based on big data. If you ask them, give a theoretical proof of how this algorithm works, they are not able to do so. In fact, they are being told that your algorithm is biased based on race or gender or something like that. Unless you can prove how you reach the conclusion. Why did you recommend that these are the 3 best candidates for this job? What is the logic? And these people in AI saying we cannot give you the model that the algorithm uses, because the algorithm is learning heuristically. It is learning heuristically. It is a very pragmatic, empirically based approach. So a possibility that I put on the table is that Indian knowledge system was a kind of similar to machine learning, and basically using experience. Experience is the big data. You keep improving your algorithm. So you keep making better idlis because you make it this way, then the people like it more. You make it that way, people don't like it, then you add this masala, then you change the temperature. So you are constantly experimenting and constantly improving. So therefore, the Indians were algorithm builders, and similar to machine learning today. This is a theory. This sort of says, this is why I wrote this book on AI. People ask what's the relevance with Indian traditions, and I wrote this book on AI to bring my original career, which was in AI 50 years ago, into the modern context. And that I feel that AI has brought to the forefront today a kind of an approach to knowledge which is algorithmic rather than model building. What do you think of that?
Beautiful. I think, Professor Murthy, how would you like to take on what Rajit is proposing? Is our knowledge system based on models, or is it algorithmic? And if so, are the empirical algorithms that pragmatically work, and therefore it has been built up in a very big way, therefore we could do the contributions? Professor Murthy.
If you don't mind, I beg to differ with Professor Rajiv. Just because I don't know something does not mean it doesn't exist. This is where I want to start with. Okay. In my view, most of the Indian system must have been, I would say must have been, because I don't know. Okay. Based on real theoretical models. Only thing is, what we see now is only the algorithm part of it. The theoretical science part of it, possibly because it was not documented, as Lakshman was telling, it started in orally, somewhere the chain got broken, and as a result, we do not have it. But at the same time, in the last 50 years after independence or so, or now 75 years we are talking about, people did not take it up seriously, because we somehow, we have been somehow got, I would say, tuned ourselves that possibly we are not the best, and people on the other side, on the west, are possibly the best, so I have to accept whatever they say about me. And as a result, true inquiry into that, okay, people doing PhDs, for example, when I wanted to give this nano copper things to my PhD student, okay, he was telling me, sir, will I really get a PhD? Will some professor somewhere, if I send this thesis, will he accept that thesis? Okay, and because most of the things that are being done is, they will say these are all empirical. Okay, where is the science that you are bringing in? So unless a large number of people do research into this, and the government has to support, I don't think. I mean, until, again, I'm sorry to go into politics, until possibly BJP came into picture, nobody even wanted to support research on this kind of a thing. Okay, so for many years, 60 years after independence, we did not touch this. It is only now we are, for example, Indian knowledge system. Every IIT is trying to have. We have a cell, Indian knowledge system cell at IIT Hyderabad, where we are trying to pick up every one of the Indian scientific thing. And I am requesting my faculty. I say, I will give you funding. Are you interested to do research? Okay.
Beautiful.
So unless we do this, maybe 50 years down the line, we will be able to prove to the world that there was science behind it. It was not just algorithm, but it is solid models were there. But at the moment, I have to agree with Professor Rajiv that we do not see that model. We only see the algorithm.
Okay. Here is Rajiv ji giving this proposition, saying that, look, we are algorithmic. Perhaps we didn't have theoretical models. And here is Professor Bhupti saying that no, there has been scientific thinking. The experts who put together these algorithms must have had those theoretical models. Perhaps the documentation is poor. Perhaps the basis on which these algorithms have been constructed are still not fleshed out. Therefore, there's a lot of effort needed to be able to do that. And he is so positive about the fact that this kind of a research has opened up a lot of vistas for youngsters to look into what can be done, what needs to be done. I think that's a beautiful take in this panel. So, Rajiv, would you like to?
Brilliant faculty from IIT should work on this. Then you will see what's going to happen.
So I'll bring in another piece of evidence. You know, the great mathematician Srinivasa Ramanujan could not prove his theorems. In fact,
but that was a Western construct, Rajivji. The notion of a proof.
They kept saying proof. They said, wait, he had a certain intuitive approach to establishing a certain theorem, but he had a big argument with Bertrand Russell and other people saying you cannot consider it valid unless you have a theory, unless you have a proof. And they kept trying to teach him how to prove. They probably ruined a lot of his years of life that he could have spent better just producing intuitively theorems that were true. But, he didn't see any point in proving it. And then ultimately, the answer he gave is that the goddess speaks to me and gives me this. When they said, how do you know? You are writing this theorem, which is true, but how did you figure it out? And so whatever the reason is, the answer he gave is that the goddess told me. So this is as recently as 100 years ago, we've had geniuses producing brilliant facts that are valid, but not based on necessarily a model, because even he himself said, I cannot prove it. Tell me why you think that happened.
Rajiv ji, I would like to give you a couple of small updates, and I want to agree and agree to disagree with you. First and the foremost, the notion of pramana is very different from the notion of proof. The notion of proof is a very Western construct, which we have not yet internalized to be able to bring it out in a spontaneous way. But the notion of pramana was very much in the blood of these Indic researchers, if I cannot say so. And it is something which has not been built upon. More importantly, the theorems that Ramanujan had listed out, even now there are so many of these theorems for those proofs are still not known and people are working on it. But they have been succeeding, albeit at a slow pace, getting the proofs in place. That's a very interesting thing. So that's still an open question. The theorems,
but
not
the point
yet proved, but yet people are working on it.
No, I'm saying that 100 years later they're able to prove it, but he did not derive it by proof. In
exactly.
other
That I
words,
agree. We all
yeah,
agree with that.
I'm
No,
saying
no.
that no, I'm not talking about lack of, it's not that there's lack of proof. I'm saying that the
Right.
method of discovery, my question
Yes.
had to do with what was the method of discovery of wood steel, for example. So the method of
Right.
discovery of Ramanujan was not through a model, and then based on that, he comes up with proofs of various kinds. It was a kind of some kind of a super intuitive, super rational, intuitive, maybe a pramana that does not build off of models. So I give you both
Right.
examples. I give you the example of Ayurveda, which is model based, and I give you
Right.
other. I give you. I think there is the other methodology also that the Indians have had, which is not necessarily model based but algorithmic, and it is all heuristic, and the ability to internalize the big data without the
Right.
use of without the need of a supercomputer with AI machine learning in it, human being the learning system that I
Right.
am experiencing, and I'm learning so much. My mind can handle so much capacity. I'm learning, and I'm able to come up with amazing new discoveries without a model. I think this is actually an accomplishment of a higher mind.
Right, right, right. Exactly. That's the whole point, Rajivji. What you're bringing out is exactly the basis on which our scientific heritage has been built up over a period of time in terms of the demonstrable impact. We need to perhaps work backwards to retrofit what Western notions of proof could be, should be, or model should be. And I think
Yes,
that's a huge opportunity. But more
yes.
importantly, I just want to kind of take you off from there because this is a very important topic that you brought up, Rajivji, and that's something which we should talk at length. But I want to bring back the focus onto the second part of what Professor Murthy shared. And that is something that's very important. It's about how do we build that robust Indic identity best practices such that the difficulties and challenges that Professor Murthy was talking about, talked about the fact that the current dispensation in the center is ready to open up its purse and fund some projects which are in quotes esoteric, like how people otherwise think, right? So how do you build up that motivation for the students to take it up? Because he was talking about the fact that students used to ask, will this earn a PhD? Will the people look at the PhD thesis if it's sent abroad? Will they really appreciate the contributions, etc., etc.? So, Rajivji, your thoughts on Professor Murthy's second part of his statements?
Well, I think uh, you know, the government motive may be different. It may be more about, you build an identity, it has political value, because people who have a certain identity, will think a certain way. They'll be better citizens. They'll be more patriotic. They'll be more rooted. They'll be emotionally better off. That sort of thing. I think there's that kind of a rationale, continuity from one generation to the next. So there are many other advantages. I've talked about the Indian grand narrative as a major project that's lacking, that ought to exist. Uh, the question is, what would be the relationship between that and scientific discovery? Would To what extent would having an identity enhance my methodology, my praman for scientific discovery?
No,
And
I
here
would
I
like
would
to step in here, Rajivji, if you don't mind. The students, how do you motivate the students to take up these kinds of projects? That's the question.
Yeah. So I would say that if you look at one of the methodologies that I find happening in the traditional Indian systems, which could be of relevance in solving the problem today, is that they always wanted to cultivate a higher mind through meditation, through sadhana, because the problems were not solvable with the ordinary indriyas. They required a certain kind of a consciousness, clearer, stable, still able to witness, perceive both internally and externally. I think our ancestors had much sharper observation skills, and they had a multi-sensory ability to cognize things that we can't do so without instruments, and even then we can't do so. So I would say that a kind of each individual's training as a kind of in what is called adhyatma vidya, inner sciences, would be a very
Right.
important requirement. Now, the one university doing this in the US is the Maharishi International University. I have known those people for a long time. I knew Maharishi for a long time. Everybody who joins that university for the undergraduate, he goes through this transcendental meditation and a lot of meditation, and they teach him Jyotish and they teach him all kind of practices because they feel that this is part of what would make him a better scientist or a better writer or a
Okay,
better musician.
that's interesting.
And you know, it's very interesting. You look at the statistics, the SAT scores, which indicate the kind of person at high school who joined, and the GRE score, which tells you what kind of a graduate finished the undergraduate for postgraduate work. You find that the SAT scores of the input coming into the university show that they are 50, 60, 70 percentile people. They're average people. They're not brilliant. They're taking ordinary people. And by the time the
Okay,
person graduates, his GRE scores are like 95, 98. So they're taking ordinary people, and through this sadhana, they're turning them into much above average output. This is a very
very
good
interesting.
empirical test that the Vedic system of knowledge, trying to sharpen your mind and your cognition, has value. I would say that India lacks that. Indian IITs and all these places should place a huge emphasis on cultivating the inner ability, the adhyatmic ability of students. And then these students will be
Wonderful.
interested in these things.
Beautiful. Maybe I should ask Professor Manivannan. What do you say, Professor Manivannan, to what Rajiv ji is proposing? Is a student there only to kind of build up a certain skill set, or is there a need to transform oneself such that one becomes a lot more capable in order to nurture the skill set? Professor Manivannan.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Professor Mohan. And again, it's a relevant question, Rajiv ji. My view is that, first of all, in the Indian institutes, the students' definition of success is money, how big of money they can earn.
Okay.
And happiness is indexed to the money. So it is not that somehow we'll have to give an alternative to the students. We'll have to somehow motivate them to look beyond the money, the inner motivation, like what Raju ji is talking about. So yes, so I think every individual is born with certain passion. So we'll have to handhold them to follow their passion instead of focusing on computer science or mechanical engineering or whatever it is. We have to become interdisciplinary and ask them to follow the passions, give them the tools to follow the passions. And everybody, I think, needs to follow the passions instead of just the money alone. I think happiness or inner, identifying their own strength, looking inward is, I think, is most important. And as an education system, I believe we should encourage instead of forcing them to learn Sanskrit or Tamil or anything else. So look inward is what we have to tell them. Right now, the students are looking outward.
Right.
Thank you.
So essentially, what you're kind of saying is that the basis for even studying Sanskrit or Tamil, Sangam Tamil, or any of the literature would be the first step is to help the student become a better human being, not only looking outwards for gathering skills, but looking inwards to tap the inherent intrinsic energies that can enable one to focus better. So that's a very interesting point. Maybe I should ask Professor Lakshman, what do you say to this? Do you encourage your students to go into the inner journey as well to be better students?
Yes, as a matter of fact, what Professor Rajiv said is right to some extent, but I don't agree with him that we don't follow it in our educational system. That's something which I would like to say. It's not done in the institute campuses, but it is done at their homes, if you look carefully.
Okay.
Right?
So that's a very interesting point.
This is nothing new for India, right? You had a curriculum system. When does it change?
Right.
The new way of education was brought in, why it was brought in, right? And then we started following, the chain was broken and we started one particular aspect. Therefore, we are doing this kind of an education system. It doesn't take much time for us to look back, prove them that those are the ways that you learn much better and faster, number one. That has to be said to them right and above, and it asks them to look inward. Then second, given the current scenario, can I use the word, the rat race which is existing, right? Nobody has the patience to listen. That's one. That is where we need to
Right.
say no, as Professor Manivannan pointed out. The happiness is not tagged to your career where you land up or what money you put in your pocket. It's about the happiness you get when you do a job. Once they realize it, I'm sure that they would be in the right path. And Professor Murthy's point with respect to faculties involving, I'm actually, you all know, the people here would surely know, for example, our own Department of Science and Technology has a new project which is called as Science of Heritage Research Initiative, which actually I've seen last year, 2 years back when we submitted a proposal. I see a lot of professors from various parts of India have come from different perspective of science, not only metallurgy, archaeology,
Okay.
analyzing the old iron, analyzing towards various aspects, paintings, minings, etc. It's actually a right initiative, that thing which we are looking at to find out what we lost. Probably we didn't lose it. I won't say we lost it. Rediscover it and move forward. That's what is my point.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I should ask Professor Sampath Kumar, what do you say, sir, about what Lakshman says, Professor Lakshman says? How do you say that learning has not only been formal in the institutional setups like IIT, but it's also been informal in the home, where you pick up a lot of gyan, a lot of knowledge that really aids in your formal studies as well. So, Professor Sampath Kumar.
Thanks. Thanks, Professor Morgan. And my colleague Lakshman has clearly put it. It is already there with them actually. Only when they come to IIT, they miss it. But that's why whenever I take my class, I remind them actually. Not only in their home, that also in the curricula they come through. In my class, I take little senior people. I purposely make it a point to say good morning, stand up, say, and sit down actually. Looks very hard, but tell them, no, this is what we have been used to it actually. Cultivate them, finally do it. Because I told them when you go for a job, you wish them, say hello to him. That inspiration has to come through actually. So we really, wherever possible, trying to remind them what they had learned actually, and then practice that.
Okay.
Other point will be with our anyone also indicated that now always you must see potential for them actually. Then they really get motivated. And in this particular example, what I want to suggest will be, now everybody want to become entrepreneur. There are shops that will stop the self thing actually. We have got research park also there. We feel that now the student can develop a thing and then can also develop it in a research park, come out of the product, will really get motivated, take it further. So we are look at the opening, giving charges for them also. When you do this project, if you take it further, there are 1 or 2 years funding available there. You can do it research park, develop a product, they really get motivated, take the traditional knowledge into a product possible. That's one way, like possible drive for that also.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think what you all three have just brought out is the fact that satisfaction comes, or rather professional satisfaction comes from what you have contributed rather than what you have achieved in terms of what you will consume. And maybe I should ask Professor Murthy, sir, what do you say to this? How do you nurture this contributory mindset of the students so that they really can put up with the difficulties of venturing out into areas, which is what research is all about, which is not really familiar or should I say politically correct or something which people would want to stick their necks out? What do you say, Professor Murthy?
Yeah, in my view, what Lakshman has said, that yes, we do it at home, has happened from the days of in the Gurukul, everything was part of it. Okay, going inward and going outward, both were taught in these Gurukuls once upon a time. But then, thanks to our secular system that has come, for example, I'm very keen to start very soon, possibly next semester, a course on yoga. Okay. But then people will start looking at you are becoming religious. Okay. So people connect everything as if going inward is for everybody, for the whole world. I mean, in every religion, this going inward was being taught. But then you start giving colors to this in our current way of looking at that, becomes a little bit of problem. That is the reason why people at the educational institution level, nobody is trying to do it because of these issues. Whereas you tend to do it at your own homes because that is your private way of looking at it. But as Professor Rajiv talked about it, this is nothing private. Okay, growing the inner growth is something which is going to support your professional growth. For example, I can tell you my meditation has significantly helped me to be more efficient in my work. I've seen this for the last 15 years. Okay, that my efficiency in my work has significantly happened thanks to the meditation that I keep doing it. So this is something that is important to be brought from the younger age into the students and ensure that every student gives importance to this. And if that happens, you will see that the next generation that is going to grow will be going, I mean, I call it as flying with both the wings. Okay, you will be flying with both an inner growth and an external growth, both happening simultaneously.
Wonderful. On that note, I'll go back to Rajiv ji and say, Rajiv ji, so here's the big question for you. So all the professors acknowledge the fact that inner growth has really enabled themselves and the students to be able to be much more professionally effective and efficient and contribute to the society at large. And yet the inner growth knowledge system, the inner growth technology, if I kind of say so, the inner growth thing, which is what Indic civilization ethos are all about, is not that really being welcomed at large. So Rajiv ji, your last word. How do you think we should get over this? And like to hear from you. Rajiv.
So, I disagree with Professor Lakshman on that students have had this at home and maybe not in the classroom. Because when I look at the vast majority of these graduates from prestigious technology places, they want to go overseas. And when they go overseas, unlike China, where 95% of them go back to China, in the case of India, it's the other way around. Unless the visa doesn't allow them to stay, they'd love to stay overseas. So this kind of a materialistic chasing, and everybody, you go online and look at all the chatter of the Silicon Valley. I've had a closed room discussions with many Silicon Valley big shots. And it's all materialistic, and they make more money, and they want to make even more money. Then they're chasing millionaire wants to be billionaire, billionaire wants to become more. I don't see any Adhyatma Vidya there. I mean, I'm sorry. Until Modi came into power, they were cynical about what I was doing. They would trash it. They would make fun of it. They would try to bring me down because this was not very popular politically. Since Modi came into power, they've switched colors because they will get some award. Maybe Modi will give some appointment. Maybe they'll join some kind of a committee. So they want to impress because this is now the new dispensation in Delhi and they want to get some deal. So when I was discussing these kind of issues with Silicon Valley people, firstly, they told me we'll do it closed door off camera. I mean, that's pretty, as if it's something shameful. Why is it something shameful? And then their whole Q&A was based on, where do you think is the opportunity where we could go to India and buy out something? Because maybe they have a failing steel plant, we have a failing, we could privatize ISRO, maybe we could privatize this, that, maybe DRDO, we can get a contract from DRDO. Even the so-called patriotic Indians, NRIs, majority of them, their idea was, how the hell do we make some money out of it? How do we leverage India in a way that will be good for our business? And maybe we go start some venture fund and, and this venture fund, while they'll go there and talk about, great Desh Bhakti and whatnot, but they're trying to make 10x their investment and buy it off and sell it to Google or something. So it is all pragmatic, materialistic, egotistical. I wouldn't say all, but I would say the vast majority of it. So I don't see the same adhyatmic spirit that would drive an Adi Shankara or that would drive a Panini, the geniuses of their age. I don't see that the highest IQ, most brilliant people entering the prestigious colleges in India are driven by the same passion and the same cause, which is a much higher purpose. Believe me, I gave up everything 25, 20, 27, 28 years ago from a materialistic success to pursue this, hoping and I was very confident that many others will join me, because there are so many successful Indians who made more than enough. They don't need to keep making more money, but I'm very disappointed. The only way that Indians want to join and get funding these things is when they feel that it will help them politically back in India or something. So my experience, based on people I've interacted with, is not been as positive, that their upbringing in homes was of a very solid inner adhyatmic kind. Maybe we are looking at different parts of India.
Very interesting point. In fact, on that note, I think there's a lot of hope that India has, that we have professors like Professor B.S. Murthy heading important institutions and has been trying to bring in the change that can really empower every Indian person to become a better professional. right? And I think on that note, there's a lot of things that Professor Lakshman, Professor Manivandan, Professor Sampath Kumar would definitely agree with you that apart from learning from home, there's so much more to be done at the institutional level. So let me kind of say thank you. We are all done a wonderful job discussing this. This is the end of episode 2. Thank you, professors. Thank you, Rajiv ji.